Arizona Territory, spring of 1882, the sun was already high when the girl who weighed less than a sack of feed dragged a broken wagon wheel through the dust, her jaw set like iron. "Kody, leave it," I said, "leave it." "Ain't no use," came a boy's voice, hoarse and scared. "I said hush, Illy," Kody Hartman snapped, not looking back at her little brother. "You want to starve or you want to keep moving?" The boy fell silent behind her. His twin sister Elsie clung to a ragged doll with one arm, the other shielding her freckled face from the glare. Kody had walked 15 miles since dawn, her boots splitting at the toes, her dress stiff with sweat and grit. She kept going because no one else would. Their mother had died the winter before, lungs full of blood. Their father, well, he had left before Christmas and never came back. Kody had waited, rationed the flour, sold their mother's brooch in town for jerky and matches. But the food ran out, and the landlord wanted the land back. So she packed what they could carry and headed north with her siblings, hoping to find work or a miracle. By noon, heat shimmered off the desert like steam from a pot. Illy tripped and scraped his knee. Elsie whimpered. Kody turned, crouched, and kissed the girl's temple. Almost there, she lied, but they were not. The map she traded a pocket knife for had been wrong. The spring she counted on was dry. Her lips were cracked and her legs trembled, but she kept walking until the land rose into low hills and the dust turned to hard, packed red earth. Then, through the haze, she saw horses, cattle, a windmill spinning lazy circles. A ranch. She staggered forward. A man stepped out of the barn, wiping sweat off his brow with his forearm. He was tall, broad, and sunburnt, his sleeves rolled, his hat tilted back. He squinted at the trio trudging toward him. "You lost," he called. Kody straightened. "No, sir, we're looking for work." The man looked them over. Her barely 17 and all bones. The kids, barely 10, clinging to her like ducklings. "You're by yourself?" he asked. "Yes, sir," he nodded once. "I'm Boyd Harlan. This is my ranch. I'm Kody Hartman. These are Illy and Elsie." He glanced at the horizon, then at her face. "Well, Kody Hartman, let's get you out of the sun." He led them to the shade of the porch, where a pitcher of water sat sweating on a table. Kody hesitated, then poured 3 cups, handing them to the children first. Only after they drank did she take a sip herself. Boyd watched her, arms crossed. "I need a ranch hand," he said. "But I was expecting someone bigger." "I learn fast," Kody said. "You ever worked cattle?" "No, sir." He looked at her hands, blistered, calloused, not from sewing or piano. "You ever milked, chopped wood, fixed fence, cleaned stalls?" "Yes, sir," he nodded. "Then you start today. Kids can stay in the bunkhouse for now. We will figure the rest." Kody blinked. "You do not know me." "I know enough," Boyd said. "You came across desert with 2 little ones. That tells me everything." By nightfall, Kody's arms ached and her feet throbbed. She had cleaned out the chicken coop, hauled water, and chopped enough kindling to last a week. Boyd had not said much, but he watched everything. Not in a cruel way, more like he was trying to figure out what kind of creature had landed on his porch. At supper, the children laughed for the first time in weeks. Boyd had cooked beans and cornbread and something close enough to stew. Kody ate slow, her eyes on him. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. He shrugged. "I do not like seeing kids hungry, and you," he paused. "You remind me of someone." She waited, but he did not say who. The next week, she earned her keep every hour of daylight. She dragged posts for fencing, wrangled a stray calf out of a gully, and patched a section of roof during a windstorm. The hands called her too scrawny behind her back, though not for long. Word spread fast that she could outwork half of them. Boyd never joined in. When someone joked that he had hired a twig, Boyd said, "She works harder than you. Maybe I should fire you and keep the twig." The hand shut up. One evening, just before dusk, a storm rolled in sudden and mean. Lightning cracked the sky and a cry rose from the barn. Kody grabbed the lantern and ran, Boyd on her heels. A mare was down, thrashing in the straw. Her foal had come early, tangled in the berth. Kody dropped to her knees, hands already reaching. "You know what you are doing," Boyd shouted. "No," she said. "But she is dying." Boyd tied back the mare's leg. Kody reached in with both arms, found the foal's head and turned it. The mare screamed and Kody's face twisted, but she did not stop. Blood soaked her dress. Rain pounded the roof. Then finally a wet, gasping foal slid to the earth. Kody collapsed beside it, shaking. Boyd knelt beside her. "That was not just brave," he said quietly. "That was near impossible." Kody looked up at him, her eyes wide and raw. "I had to try," she whispered. He saw it then. The fire in her. Not just grit, but something gentler too, a fierce kind of love. "They called me too scrawny back home," she said, half smiling. "They are fools," Boyd said. "You are the only one worth marrying." The words hung between them, unexpected and heavy. She stared. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," he said. She stood slowly, her dress soaked and torn. "I need to check on Ellie and Elsie." Boyd reached for her hand. "Let me help." She hesitated, then let him. That night, after the kids were tucked in, Boyd walked her back to the house. They did not speak much. The desert smelled of rain. The stars were sharp above them. On the porch, she turned. "You meant what you said?" she asked. "I do not say things I do not mean." "I am not much," she said. "You are everything," he answered. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she stepped closer. He cupped her cheek with a hand rough from work, and she leaned into it. Kody had never been kissed before. But when Boyd kissed her, slow and certain, it felt like something breaking open inside her. Not pain, just everything she had locked away to survive. When they parted, she looked up at him. "What now?" "We build something," he said. "If you want," she nodded. "I want." He smiled just a little. "Good, because I am not letting you go." The morning after the storm, the air held a hush, as if the land itself was catching its breath. The desert had turned a shade darker, the dust tamped down, the scent of wet sage lingering. Kody rose early, her limbs slow with soreness, and stepped out onto the porch with her hair still damp from rinsing it with rainwater collected in a tin basin. Boyd was already in the corral, mending a length of barbed wire that had come loose during the storm. She watched him for a moment, the way he moved with quiet purpose, before walking down the steps and joining him. "You thinking of firing me yet?" she asked, her voice still hoarse from sleep. He didn't glance up. "If I did, I'd have to hire 3 men just to keep up." She crouched beside him, holding the wire steady while he twisted the ends together. "Foal made it through the night," she said. "Took milk from a bottle just before sunrise. Elsie named her Junibug." "She's got good instincts," Boyd said. "Like someone else I know." Kody shifted, brushing a splinter from her skirt. "I've been thinking. The kids can't stay in the bunkhouse forever, not with the men." "I know," he said. "There's a small room behind the tack shed, needs airing out, but it's got a stove and a cot. I can help fix it up." She kept her eyes on the fence. "I don't want charity, Boyd." "You're not getting any," he said. "You're earning every bit of it." She nodded once, then stood. "I'll start clearing it after breakfast." By midday, the sun had returned to its usual blaze. Kody dragged a broom and a tin bucket toward the shed. The space was musty, the walls lined with old bridles and harness hooks, but it was dry and sound. She opened the window, letting in a breeze thick with the scent of mesquite. Ellie and Elsie arrived with arms full of scrap rags and a cracked wash basin. Elsie set to scrubbing the floor, humming tunelessly. Ellie stood in the doorway, watching his sister work. "You think we'll stay here, Kody?" he asked, voice low. She wrung out a cloth and didn't answer right away. "If we do, we'll earn it," she said at last. Boyd brought over a stack of folded blankets and a battered oil lamp. He didn't linger, just placed them gently on the stoop and nodded before walking back toward the barn. Kody stared after him, her hands still. That evening, after the children had fallen asleep in their new room, she lingered outside the tack shed, the stars sharp overhead. She found Boyd by the paddock, checking the latch on the gate. "You always work this late?" she asked. He didn't turn. "Most nights." She leaned against the fence. "You don't talk much about before." "Not much to say," he replied. "I had a brother, he died at Antietam. Parents didn't last long after that." "I'm sorry," she said. "So was I, for a long time." Kody looked down at her hands. "Our pa left. Ma died slow. I thought I hated him for going, but some days I think maybe he just couldn't bear to watch her fade." Boyd turned to her then, his face unreadable in the low light. "You're not like them," he said. "You stayed," she swallowed. "I didn't know how to leave." "That's not weakness," he said. "That's grit." She stepped closer, her voice quieter now. "You really meant it, what you said in the barn," he nodded. "I don't throw words around, Kody," she hesitated. "I've never been anyone's wife, I wouldn't know how to be." He stepped closer too, the space between them narrowing. "You don't have to know, you just have to want it." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and cottonwood. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "I do." Boyd reached for her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "Then we figure it out together." She let her fingers curl into his. "All right." They stood like that for a while, quiet and still, the desert around them vast and calm. Neither spoke of love, not yet. But something had settled between them, something rooted deep. When she finally walked back toward the shed, her steps were slow but sure. Boyd watched her go, then turned back to the gate, his hand resting on the wood as if anchoring himself to this place, this moment, and the woman who had come through fire to stand beside him. Kody stepped into the main house near dusk, her shoulders tight with the ache of hauling feed sacks from the loft. The kitchen smelled of wood smoke and onion peel, and Boyd stood at the stove, scraping browned meat into a pan with cornmeal. He didn't glance over. "It'll be ready soon," he said. She brushed dust from her sleeves, then crossed to the wash basin. "You always cook supper yourself?" "Used to trade chores with a neighbor's boy back when I was short on hands. He left for Prescott last fall, chasing work." She dried her hands on her skirt and leaned her hip against the counter. "You ever think about hiring someone again? I've thought about asking you to stay permanent." She didn't answer right away. Through the open window came the sound of crickets starting up and one of the horses stamping in the paddock. "I could build us a bigger room," he added. "Something behind the house with real walls, not just a cot and a stove." She tilted her head. "You offering me a roof or a home," he sighed, turned to face her. "I'm offering you a place beside me, not behind." Kody studied him. His face was flushed from the stove, but his eyes were steady. She reached for a tin cup and filled it from the pitcher. "Wouldn't be just me," she said. "You take me, you take them." "I know." She took a drink, then set the cup down. "They need schooling. Elsie's bright and Ellie's got a good head for numbers. There's a woman in town teaches out of her parlor. Her name's Mrs. Ranney." "I know her. She's fair." Kody looked toward the window. "I'd want them there twice a week at least. I can manage mornings here, then ride them in." "We'll make it work." She folded her arms. "You sure this is what you want? It's not just a warm kitchen and a quiet night. You'll be tied to 3 mouths and one of them's mine." "I've had quiet," he said. "Didn't suit me near as well as this." He turned the flame down and removed the skillet from the heat. She stepped forward and reached out, resting her hand over his. His were rougher, but hers were work-worn now too, and neither pulled away. "I ain't never had a ring," she said. "Never even seen one up close." "I haven't got one," he said. "But I've got a silver dollar my brother carried through the war. I could shape it into something, maybe," she blinked. "That'd be enough." After supper, they sat on the back step, watching the last sliver of light slide behind the hills. The children were inside, whispering stories under patched quilts. Boyd handed Kody a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "Supply list," he said. "If we're building a room, we'll need lumber and nails. Figured we'd ride into town tomorrow. You trust me with your coin. I trust you with my land, and my name." She held the paper without opening it, fingers brushing the edge. "I've never had a name that meant something good. You do now." She tucked the paper into her pocket. "Then I'll carry it right." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of creosote and warm wood. Boyd leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "You ever think about what you'd do if you hadn't come here?" She didn't answer right away. "I'd probably be digging for water in some dry arroyo, trying to make a meal out of roots, maybe begging bread in Bisbee." He turned to her. "I'm glad you didn't." "I am too," she said. Their shoulders brushed and neither moved away. The quiet between them wasn't heavy. It was something settled, like soil pressed firm after rain. "I'll go see Ranney," she said. "Tell her to expect the children come Monday," he nodded. We'll ride in early, I'll speak with the lumberman. Kody tilted her head back, eyes on the stars. You ever think about planting trees out here? Haven't had time. Well, she said, maybe we do now. Then we'll plant some. She smiled just once and small and rested her hand against his knee. Boyd covered it with his own, gentle but sure. They didn't speak again that night. There was nothing left to decide. The ride into town took most of the morning. Kody rode Boyd's spare gelding a steady bay with a temperate gait and kept her chin tucked to the wind, which kicked up fine grit along the trail. Boyd rode ahead, his broad back straight, his hat pulled low. The children had stayed behind under the watch of an older ranch hand named Merritt, who'd lost a toe in a threshing accident and no longer rode fence. He'd grunted when Kody handed him a list of chores for the children, but tucked it in his vest all the same. The town of Benson sat between low hills and a stretch of rail, its main street rutted and lined with false front buildings. As they dismounted, a man in a linen shirt leaned on a post outside the livery and looked Kody over slow, eyes crawling like ticks. "She's with me," Boyd said, without raising his voice. The man turned his gaze elsewhere. They walked together down the boardwalk. Boyd peeled off toward the lumberyard while Kody made for the schoolhouse, which was little more than a converted sitting room behind Mrs. Ranney's dress shop. Inside, the chalkboard still bore yesterday's arithmetic, and a row of mismatched chairs lined one side of the room. Mrs. Ranney, a pale woman with sharp spectacles and a voice like a bell, listened as Kody explained the arrangement. "You'll bring them twice a week," the woman repeated, tapping her pen against her ledger. "They'll need slates, readers, and their own pencils. I don't tolerate idleness." "They won't give you cause to," Kody said, keeping her voice even. Mrs. Ranney's eyes narrowed slightly. "And discipline. I handle that myself." The woman gave a single nod and scribbled the children's names beneath the others. "Then we'll see them Monday." Kody stepped back into the sunlight, adjusting her shawl against the sudden breeze that swept down the street. She found Boyd near the milliner's, waiting with a parcel wrapped in oilcloth. "Got what we need," he said, handing her the package. "Nails, hinges, window glass, enough to start anyhow." She held it against her hip. "School's set." "She's strict. Strict won't hurt them." They passed the general store on the way back to the horses, and Boyd paused. "You want to pick out fabric for curtains?" Kody raised a brow. "Curtains? Well, if that room's going to be yours, might as well look like it." Inside, bolts of calico lined the wall beside jars of penny candies and sacks of flour. Kody ran her fingers along the edge of a cornflower blueprint. "This one?" Boyd asked. She shook her head. "Too bright." He picked up a softer weave, dusty green with faded yellow sprigs. "What about this?" She hesitated, then nodded. "That'll do." They rode home beneath a sky smeared with thin clouds. On the ridge above the ranch, a pair of hawks spiraled high, wings motionless. As they crested the hill, the land sloped down to the familiar shape of the barn and the corral, and Kody let her eyes rest there for a while. At the house, Merritt waved them down from the porch. "Junebug's standing on her own," he called. Kody dismounted without answering and strode straight to the barn. Inside, the foal wobbled upright, her thin legs quaking slightly but holding. Kody crouched beside her, watching as she nuzzled her mother's flank. Boyd leaned against the stall door. "You did that." She didn't look up. "No." She did it herself. That night, the children helped her tack the green fabric over the small window in their room. Elsie rubbed the soft hem between her fingers. "It's the color of summer grass," she whispered. Kody tucked a stray curl behind the girl's ear, then stood. Boyd waited outside the door, his arms crossed loosely, one shoulder against the frame. "You hungry?" he asked. "I could eat." They sat on the porch, a plate between them, the dusk softening every edge. Boyd handed her the silver dollar, now flattened and roughly shaped into a band. The edges were smooth, the surface dulled from the work of his hands. "It's not much," he said. "It's honest," she replied, sliding it onto her finger. He watched her for a moment, then asked, "You ever think about planting corn over the north pasture?" She blinked. "Corn? Land's flat." Water runs near the bend, she leaned back. I thought you were a cattle man. Maybe I'm becoming a family man. Her throat tightened, but not from sorrow. She turned to him fully, her face bare in the fading light. You already are. Boyd reached for her hand and she let him take it. They sat that way until the stars came out, the porch creaking beneath them, the whole wide desert breathing in time with the quiet between them. The new room rose slow and honest, board by board. Boyd built the frame himself, measuring each beam twice and cutting with care. Kody helped set the rafters, her hands steady on the hammer, her balance sure on the ladder despite the wind that came down off the ridge. She didn't speak much those days, but when she did, it was to ask for the next nail or pass a length of rope. They worked side by side without fuss, and as the walls took shape, so did something deeper, quieter between them. Not just comfort, but belonging. Elsie and Ellie watched from the porch most afternoons, their chores done early. Elsie had taken to sketching things in the dirt with a stick, birds mostly, and once a house with smoke curling from a chimney. Ellie collected flat stones and arranged them in careful spirals near the well. He didn't say what they were for. The room stood finished by mid-May. The roof held against the wind, and morning light spilled over the rough plank floor in golden streaks. Kody moved the cot herself, then added a small trunk Boyd had borrowed off Merritt. She stitched a pillowcase from flour sack cotton and tucked it neat beneath the quilt. They didn't talk about a wedding. There was no preacher close, no lawman who cared much for ceremony. But one morning, Boyd rode into town and came back with a slip of paper signed by the county clerk and 2 witnesses, Merritt and the storekeep's wife. He handed it to Kody without fanfare, and she folded it in half and slid it beneath her pillow. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Kody stepped out into the yard barefoot, her hem brushing the grass Boyd had coaxed from dry earth. He was sitting on the edge of the porch, sleeves rolled, boots beside him. You finish the books with Elsie? He asked. She's reading better than I did at her age. What about Ellie? He wants to learn to write numbers real neat. Says he might keep a ledger someday. Boyd looked toward the barn. He's got a steady mind, could run a place like this one day. Kody sat beside him, her foot grazing his. Maybe he will. They sat a long time, listening to the wind catch in the cottonwoods. Then Boyd turned to her, his voice lower than before. You ever wish things had gone different? She looked out at the dark, where the land stretched wide and silent. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like not to have to fight for every scrap. But if things had gone easy, I never would have come here. He reached for her hand, not quick, just sure. I'm glad you did. She let her head rest against his shoulder, watching the stars blink in and out behind thin clouds. I am too. Later, they lay quiet in the new room, the window open to the night breeze. Kody curled close, her breath even against his collarbone. Boyd kept his arm around her waist, fingers brushing the curve of her spine. Neither spoke. There was no need. The days stretched warm and full. The foal grew strong enough to run, and Ellie learned to ride bareback on an old mare who'd once belonged to Boyd's uncle. Elsie helped Kody start a patch of beans near the fence line, and when the first shoots came up pale green and trembling, she clapped her hands like she'd won a prize. Boyd added a coop for hens and set posts for a future corral expansion. Kody filled the new shelves in their room with folded linens and jars of dried herbs. When she found a smooth river stone shaped like a heart, she set it on the windowsill without comment. Boyd never moved it. One afternoon, a rider came up the trail, an older woman with a wide hat and a face full of sun lines. She introduced herself as Mrs. Crail, widow of a rancher from down past the San Pedro. She'd heard Boyd had taken on a wife and brought a pot of sourdough starter and a sack of dried peaches. Kody invited her in, and they sat at the table while Elsie fetched water and Ellie offered a slice of pie he'd helped bake. Mrs. Crail stayed through supper, telling stories of her younger days, some sad, some sharp with laughter. Before she left, she took Kody's hand in both of hers. You've made a place here, the woman said. That's no small thing. After she rode off, Kody stood by the fence watching dust rise where her horse had passed. Boyd came up behind her, arms folded. "You think she'll speak well of us?" Kody smiled just a little. "I think she already has." Late that summer, the children brought home a stray dog thin, with one ear torn and ribs like fence wire. Boyd pretended to grumble, but built a pen near the shed and let the animal sleep under the porch when the nights cooled. They named him Button, for no reason anyone remembered. On the first cool morning of September, Boyd handed Kody a small leather pouch. Inside was a ring, not the silver coin one, but a new one, shaped from a bit of gold he'd traded for a steer. The band was plain, but the weight of it in her hand made her eyes sting before she slipped it on. He watched her, his voice soft. "I wanted something that would last." "It already has," she said, and kissed him, slow and certain, while the wind stirred the curtains behind them. They built their life the same way they'd built the room, steady, with hands that didn't flinch from hard work. The land gave them what it could, and they gave it back in kind. Boyd taught Ellie to mend saddle leather, and Kody showed Elsie how to sew a hem straight. The children grew, and the house grew with them. Another room, a proper stove, a bench beneath the window where Kody sat in the evenings, mending or just watching the sky shift colors. They never left the ranch. Never needed to. Letters came sometimes, and visitors now and again, but nothing ever pulled them away from what they'd made. And each night, as the oil lamp burned low and the desert quieted around them, Boyd would wrap his arm around Kody, and she'd rest her hand over his chest, feeling the slow, steady beat beneath her palm. She never asked again if he was sure, and he never stopped being.